Hello everybody, my name is Taryn Moller Nicoll and I am the 2024 Gallery Route 1 Artist Fellow along with Sofia Gonzalez. My final show of the year is called Dream Girls, and I'm just delighted for the opportunity and the freedom to create an exhibition like this. It's definitely something I never would have given myself permission to do before. So a little bit of background on this exhibition. The past 5 years have represented a time of a lot of change for me personally. I have become a mother. I finished my graduate school MFA program. I became a professional art administrator, so stepping outside of my studio practice voluntarily for a number of years, and really wrestling with this idea of what it is that I want to say. And for quite some time, I felt really unsure of what that was. I spent a lot of years as a studio artist representing the stories of others and finding tremendous fulfillment in that. And after some time, I realized that I had never really expressed an opinion of mine or an original thought of mine. And even going down that path, I found myself reluctant to really delve into the things that I felt impacted me, almost reluctant or embarrassed to share these ideas that I felt were somewhat menial or easily dismissed, not enough. And after a period of time, especially since becoming a mother and wrestling with these different iterations of myself as a woman that I feel I now kind of live with on a daily basis, I started to ask the question, does everyone have an idealized version of themselves that they live life with? Whether that version is someone they would like to be, someone they thought they would be, someone they felt they had to be to receive approval, to have recognition or safety. And I thought to myself, what if I could create a representation of what this idealized character or figure or individual looked like for me? So I was raised in the 1990s and tremendously impacted by pop culture at the time. And while I've always considered myself an academic and maybe protected by this shield of academia, I always was so fascinated by and kind of in love with, Britney Spears and the Spice Girls and the Victoria's Secret supermodels. And so I created an initial representation of myself alongside one of these Disney princess pop star amalgams, and you can see that there is a relationship between the two. It is not fraught with resentment in this case. In fact, the representation of me really loves this avatar and alter ego and desires them and appreciates them and wants to be close to them. So the idea of this show is kind of representing that connection and almost idolization of that character, but also really showing what a big gap and distance exists between these two figures. So there is love there, but there's also this chasm between the two where one will never quite achieve the other. So we'll move from this piece, which is called I Want It That Way, to this installation in the corner here. What I created here was a reference to artworks that I have created in the past, about 10 or 15 years ago even, where I would use myself as the model. And you can see we're using some kind of really stereotypical hyperbolic, kind of sexualized, fantastical stylistic techniques here. We've got our, our kind of bunny look here. We've got a fantastical, beautiful peacock woman gazing into the distance. And all of these images are sandwiched between these loose, rough illustrational renderings of myself now, highlighting this idea that at one point, maybe 15 years ago to even 5 years ago, I did reference myself as something of the dream girl, kind of like a finished product, whereas now I feel much more like a work in progress. And these images are, again, in relationship with one another, where the me now, the way that I feel now, is kind of looking back, somewhat wistfully, but also with interest at the way that I used to feel, and just considering it, being aware of that, and kind of peering through the distance at this relationship that I had with myself, and then kind of wondering what the next iteration of that relationship will be. This installation is called When We Are Apart, I Feel It Too. And moving on to this oil painting, it's called I Don't Need What You Ain't Got. All of the works in this show, they received their titles from pop and pop rock ballads from the 1990s and early 2000s. This piece was very, very reflective of my overall theme in this show because of the idea of labor and what labor actually indicates about these two figurative representations. So on the left, I've got my bombastic dream girl, and she's making direct eye contact. She's loud and proud. She's not afraid whatsoever of being victimized or attacked. She's just fully present in herself. However, she was so quick and easy for me to paint, and I felt like that was such an accurate representation of the lightness and levity and ease with which this kind of character in my mind moves through life. And I felt like that was that stark contrast to the actual me on the right-hand side that took a lot more work and study and effort to create, which I felt like is so much more indicative of who I am now. I am someone, I'm working hard to be the person that I need to be. It takes time and growth and concentration to succeed and to move on to the next stage in life. So even the mechanics of creating this piece felt so true to the overall message, where you've got instantaneous, quick, light, bright, everything works out, versus more challenging, more complex, a little more is required to make things flourish and proceed in the way that I want them to. So yes, I Don't Need What You Ain't Got was a real exercise, both conceptually and in terms of process, in expressing my concept for this show. And then the next step of this project will be to interview other individuals and find out who their dream girl is. So one of the most fulfilling parts of this project so far is sharing this idea with others and actually asking them, can you relate to the idea of an idealized version of yourself? Like when you close your eyes, is there someone who you are that differs from who you are when you open your eyes, or someone that you want to be or should have been? And almost always the answer is yes. And so when we actually dive into the specificities of what that avatar or dream idealized self is, it's incredibly freeing for the women. And I say women because I'm focusing on women for this project. It's incredibly freeing for those women to actually speak with reckless abandon about what this person looks like to them, because this is something that many of us I have found, feel like we have to be above. And we don't speak of these things. We're not impacted by them. But the truth is that many of us are. So these are both women who are incredibly close to me in my life, women who I think are the actual dream girl, who are extremely accomplished, really inspiring, loving, kind individuals who contribute to their communities, who love their families, who are incredibly talented and gifted. And each of them instantaneously could tell me what their dream girl looked like. So Your Love is Electric is based on one of my very closest friends who's like a sister to me. And she really, really wanted this kind of mix between kind of pin-up, bold strength and a little bit of edge, a little bit of rock and roll, but still with kind of classic hyperbolic proportions. And she wanted a little crystal ball here that could tell her the future, so she would know how to make decisions with tremendous strength. And this piece is called Who Was She? An Ever Lovely Jewel. And this individual is a sister to me. And although she's someone who takes the world stage as a musician night after night, and I think anyone would say without a doubt that she is the height of achievement, she could identify this piece of clip art from the 1990s that was a girl in a princess dress, and she has modeled her image after that piece of super, super simplified clip art ever since. So the final point of this exhibition is an interactive piece called Well, Look at You. Here we have got some mirrors installed on the wall that are obscured by these plexiglass sheets that have a slight frosted texture to them. And visitors are invited to come and actually create a representation of themselves, a drawing of themselves on the plexiglass. And so they can almost see their reflection in the mirror, but it is somewhat blurred out. And so it's really an experiment to see who is going to draw what they think they are versus rely on these kind of blurred contours that are available to them, and see what people produce when they're invited to create an image of themselves.
My name is Sofia Gonzalez, and this is my show Accumulations here at Gallery Route 1. This show is the accumulation of my year as an artist fellow here at Gallery Route 1, and it was a really transformative year for me. When I received the fellowship in December of 2023, I had found out I was pregnant in that week, and so it was a new year of 2024 of becoming an artist fellow and having this work, this place to create work for, and also creating my daughter at the same time. So this show kind of encapsulates what it was like to think about what it means to be pregnant and to become someone's home. A lot of my work has to do with creating a sense of place, usually out in landscape and in the places that I live, by creating plants and different vegetables, material to create natural dyes with. And so this was kind of a turn to think about my own body and my own being as a home for someone else too. So a lot of the pieces that you see are kind of just studio thoughts, a lot of reckonings on how to deal with the experience of pregnancy and postpartum. So a lot of different drawings and things that is what my studio wall looks like in my own home studio. A lot of different collages thinking about the body and the growing being inside of me as well. In addition, you'll see these little jars here. So the jars are all different natural materials that I collected in my time in 2024. They are all different natural dye materials. So you'll see marigolds, indigo, oak leaves, oak galls, pomegranate flowers, some California fuchsia, as well as some cherry bark that I foraged as well. And they are housed in jars that are 4-ounce jars that I purchased from the donor milk bank in San Jose to have milk to feed my daughter in the early days postpartum. And so there are as many number of jars as days that I was postpartum when the show opened as a way to kind of meditate each day on, one, how much I could create each day, both in thinking about milk production and just in thinking about the ability I had to create art in those days. And so that's what these jars are for, and they help to show the accumulation of time as well. Here, in this piece here, when I was in the hospital in labor, these papers were shooting out of the machine next to me. They were calculating my heart rate, my daughter's heart rate, as well as my labor contractions. And they just were creating this whole accumulation on the floor next to me while I was in labor. And I asked the nurse, what do you do with these? And they didn't know. And I asked if I could take them home. They said no one had ever asked that. But since I took them home, I've been painting on them kind of as a meditation in the 20 minutes or so I have during the day. And you can see the green is my daughter Olive's heart rate while she was in utero before giving birth, and then the red is my labor contraction. So it's our first collaboration, I would say, is that. And then the final pieces of this show include these invasive attempts. These are a series I started a couple years ago, and they've kind of grown since, and it's fun to see them in a new context now that I am a mother and have gone through pregnancy. They are oak galls, which are wasp nests, and they are wrapped with different silks that I've dyed with natural materials as a way of protecting and kind of guarding the oak gall and the nest that is within. So this is my show Accumulations. It has been a joy to be an artist fellow here at Gallery Route 1. Both the members, artist members, and my fellow Taryn have been such a joy to work with, and it's really given me a reason to create work in a year that I may have not paused to make time to create art. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jeff Downing, and I'm an artist, and this is my show. It's titled The Grand Façade, A Reverence for Water. I really came up with this project about 2 years ago. I've been doing work about water. I've been doing work about climate change and water and rising tides. And I was on a road trip, and I kind of realized that there's drought everywhere. And I saw like particular lakes that were drying up and rivers that were drying up. And I felt like I should bring an awareness about that, make some work and bring an awareness about our usage of water and saving water and resilience, climate resilience. So I started taking samples of water to think about them as a relic, as something to be preserved and thought about. So I created these pieces that are they're diptychs, and they're bas relief. They're made of ceramics and glaze. And they're actually modeled after reliquary boxes, and so think about water as a relic. And so each one is 2 pieces, and they're not always like thinking about as a box. For example, this piece right here is not a box, but and I was also looking at historic reliquary boxes and kind of making reference to them too. So there's 12 pieces in this show, and so there's 24 components. Each piece is mainly made out of ceramic, but I use found objects. I was thinking about what I would put the water in, so I was antiquing one day, and I found these apothecary bottles. I thought they'd be really great to put the water in, and so some of them are kind of reference the water and the place, and some of them are, in particular, the piece is really made around the bottle. So I have the bottle, I choose the bottle and the water and the location of the water, and I make the piece kind of around the bottle. This one in particular that you're looking at now was the first one that I made, and it was really started with a box, and I cut the box in half, and that's how I kind of came about the making diptychs. I had the box made, and it was going to be an opening box, but then I cut it in half, and I realized, oh, this could be a hanging piece, and it could be 2 parts, and so that was really the first one, and that began the series, and kind of I started getting excited about making diptychs, which I've never done before. This one in particular, this is the title piece. This piece, you'll notice there's a found object in the middle. It's a porcelain horse that I found at an antique store. It's actually made in Japan. And I made this piece referencing a horse in particular. All of them reference a species, either a plant or an animal. And this one is the water is from the Colorado River in Arizona. And I have a studio mate that works with wild horse rescue. And I was thinking about that, and I found out about a band of horses that lives by the Colorado River in Arizona. Small band, there's actually 2 of them, about 10 to 15 horses. And they're not really threatened because they're not that large of a group. But I thought that would be a great piece to put that in my piece about the wild horses. Each one, like I said, each piece references the water and then the species, either plant or animal, that relies on the water in that location. This one is actually about Lake Tahoe and the spotted owl. And I found an apothecary bottle with an owl on it, which is great. And I made an owl feather there. I had a good time making these pieces. It was a challenge for me, and sometimes because it's a different kind of work for me. And imagining how I would make the pieces that were about drought and for references to forest fires, but I also wanted to have a sense of hope in the pieces too, that we'll be able to adapt to our uses of water, and learn how to conserve water in better ways, and protect the environment. So that was my main concern about this, this work, kind of raising awareness of the environment and water usage. And some of the species that are referenced are probably species that we don't think about that much. For example, I have a wolverine in one of my pieces, references the wolverine. All the titles are the Latin name for the species. And not a lot of people think about wolverines. They're pretty rare to see them, but there are some that live in northern Washington state. So the water I got from there is from the Twisp River in Washington state. There's another piece that references the Sierra Nevada red fox, which I learned is a fox that lives close to Lake Tahoe, in the area near Markleyville. And there was a fire there a few years ago called the Tamarack Fire. And so their habitat was altered. And my concern with the Sierra Nevada red fox is that there are not many left. So there are efforts to conserve the species there too. And so plants. I have the California live oak referenced. I have what else are the plants? I have there's a few others here. But so. And then this piece in particular was the Columbia River. This one references a rabbit that used to live in the Columbia River Basin. The rabbit was threatened, but there were efforts to conserve the species by breeding the rabbit with a rabbit from Idaho, actually. It's called the Columbia River pygmy rabbit. It's a small rabbit that fits to the side of your hand. And I made these burrowing kind of alcoves because this is the only rabbit that burrows. So I made burrows and I put kind of stashes of food, acorns, in the burrows. And then, to end with this one, this is kind of an homage to, the California live oak, But also I put these fire hydrants in to honor the firefighters. In a lot of places I was exploring where there was fire damage, I noticed a lot of signs that by houses that were saved by firefighters, they were like "Thanks, firefighters" signs, and so I wanted to kind of pay respect to the hard work of the California Fire, the Cal Fire, and other firefighters, kind of stopping fire from devastating the landscape. And so that's it. It's going to open tomorrow, and I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about it, and I'm really great and honored to be here at Gallery Route 1. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Zappa, and I am a Gallery Route 1 artist member. My show at the gallery is called For the Birds, and it runs from December 7th, 2024 to January 5th, 2025. Let's do some bird watching. My interest began during the COVID pandemic. Working from home, as most were, my studio overlooks the front garden, the perfect vantage point to set up a bird feeder. I placed one about 10 feet from my window, and I guess you can say it was love at first flight. The birds from this exhibit were taken from photographs, either my own or with permission granted by the photographers. The matting and frames are handmade and part of the artwork. To create them, I extrapolated themes, elements, and color, or all three, from the characteristics of the birds themselves and integrated them into the mats and frames. There are 18 portraits in all, 4 6x6, 5 8x10, 4 11x14 in portrait, and 5 11x14 in landscape. Those are unframed dimensions. The painting media for the birds are all water-based oil. Sounds like a contradiction in terms, but it's basically an oil-based paint that is odorless, and both water and oil medium can be used for mixing and cleaning. I have a small studio in my house, so the odorless component was an attractive consideration. The frames and mats are mixed media. I used a combination of oil and acrylic paint, and then anything else I could find in my garage: sparkle glue, pen, wax-colored pencil, pastel pencil, beads, cloth, burlap, felt, toothpicks, wood dye, polyurethane varnish for the unfinished wood, and I varnished all the artwork in either a matte, satin, or gloss finish. The series took 5 months to complete, from January to May of 2024, including the matting and framing. Although I've been painting and drawing birds for a very long time, this is my first dedicated series and exhibition. Birds have been an inspiration to artists for as long as time exists. Their beauty, their colors, their markings, all help us to understand the world a little bit better. great pleasure and joy to create these paintings, and I hope if you have an opportunity to come to the gallery and view it, that it'll do the same for you. Birds connect us, they bring us closer to nature, and they help us appreciate the joy of life and its journey. Thank you, and I hope to see you at the gallery.